Beatriz Medeiros adjusted her sleek black blazer for the third time while staring at São Paulo's towering glass monuments, her reflection merging with the city's financial district through floor-to-ceiling windows that framed her corner office like a museum display of success. And at 28, she had meticulously constructed everything her traditional Mineiro family expected: a prestigious corporate law career, prime real estate overlooking Avenida Paulista, and a reputation as Brazil's most promising international business attorney. Yet standing there on that humid March morning in 2012, an inexplicable emptiness consumed her, as if all her achievements were beautiful ornaments in a life missing its soul. Her iPhone buzzed insistently with another message from her mother about the weekend family gathering in Belo Horizonte, where conversations would inevitably spiral toward marriage expectations, grandchildren timelines, and her father's business associate's son, who possessed exactly the right qualifications for a successful lawyer's husband. Discussions that made her stomach clench with a frustration she couldn't articulate, because how could she explain that perfection on paper felt like a prison when your heart yearned for something indefinable. The imposing stack of merger contracts on her mahogany desk represented months of meticulous preparation for the largest international acquisition in her firm's history, a Brazilian mining conglomerate joining forces with an American multinational. And while her colleagues practically vibrated with excitement about the prestige and financial implications, Beatriz found herself questioning whether this carefully orchestrated life was merely an elaborate performance, wondering if somewhere beyond these glass walls existed a version of herself who felt genuinely alive rather than professionally accomplished. She lifted the lead contract with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly, noting how the American company's chief negotiator would arrive that afternoon for final discussions. And something stirred deep within her chest, a peculiar anticipation that had nothing to do with closing deals or advancing her career, as if the universe was positioning chess pieces for a game she didn't yet understand, preparing to shatter everything she thought she knew about love, destiny, and the invisible threads that connect two hearts across impossible distances. Standing there with São Paulo's morning chaos unfolding 30 floors below, Beatriz felt certain that by evening, her perfectly planned existence would be forever altered. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished conference room as Beatriz awaited the arrival of the American company's chief negotiator, her heart racing with anticipation that felt strangely personal rather than professional, when the mahogany doors opened to reveal a man whose presence seemed to shift the very atmosphere of the room, his confident stride and warm brown eyes immediately capturing her attention in ways that defied her usual composure during high-stakes negotiations. Michael Harrison, he introduced himself with a slight southern drawl that made her name sound like music when he repeated it back to her. And as their handshake lingered a moment longer than business protocol required, Beatriz felt an electric current travel up her arm, a sensation so unexpected and powerful that she had to steady herself against the polished conference table, wondering if he felt it too, from the way his eyes seemed to search her face with sudden intensity. Throughout the morning negotiations, she found herself studying his expressions more than the contracts, mesmerized by the way he listened with genuine interest to her legal explanations, never interrupting or mansplaining as so many American businessmen had done before, instead asking thoughtful questions that revealed both sharp intelligence and unexpected respect for her expertise, making her feel seen and valued in ways that went far beyond professional courtesy. When he mentioned growing up in a small town where his grandmother taught him Portuguese from old Brazilian soap operas, Beatriz felt her breath catch, because what were the odds that this sophisticated American executive would speak her language? And when he switched to flawless Portuguese to ask if she'd like to continue their discussion over coffee, using the exact same regional expression her grandmother used to say, she felt the universe had orchestrated something impossible, something that made her carefully controlled world suddenly feel electric with possibility. As they walked toward the lobby after the meeting concluded, Michael paused beside a framed photograph of São Paulo's skyline from the 1940s, studying it with an expression she couldn't quite read. And when he murmured something about how some connections transcend time and distance, Beatriz felt certain he was speaking about more than business partnerships, her heart hammering as she realized that everything she thought she knew about her perfectly planned future was about to change forever. Beatriz found herself drawn to Michael in ways that transcended the usual boundaries of business. Her thoughts lingering on his warm smile and the way his eyes softened when he spoke of his grandmother's lessons, a vulnerability that made her heart ache with a tenderness she hadn't expected to feel in the midst of corporate negotiations. Are you feeling that special chemistry between Beatriz and Michael? If you're loving following this journey, subscribe to the Sparks Fly Stories channel for more stories that will touch your heart. Shall we continue our story? As they shared stories over coffee in a quiet São Paulo cafe, the noise of the city faded into a distant hum, and Beatriz discovered layers of Michael's personality that resonated deeply with her own. His passion for Brazilian culture, his struggles adapting to the fast-paced corporate world, and his quiet determination to honor his family's legacy while forging his own path. She noticed the subtle way he listened, not just hearing her words, but understanding the emotions behind them. And in those moments, Beatriz felt a rare connection that seemed to bridge the gap between their different worlds, a connection that whispered of destiny and the possibility of something more profound than either had dared to imagine. During their conversation, Michael casually mentioned a faded photograph he carried in his wallet, a picture of a young couple standing in front of São Paulo's skyline from decades ago, a detail that sparked a flicker of recognition in Beatriz's mind, though she couldn't yet place its significance. As the afternoon light shifted and shadows lengthened, Beatriz felt a growing warmth in her chest, a sense of completion and hope that this unexpected encounter might be the beginning of a transformative journey, even as a faint shadow of doubt crept into her thoughts, hinting at challenges yet to come. Her mind briefly wandered to the family expectations she had tried to escape, and the unspoken barriers that might stand between her and this newfound connection. But she pushed the thoughts aside, choosing instead to savor the fragile spark that had ignited between them. Beatriz felt the weight of her family's expectations pressing down harder than ever, their voices echoing in her mind like a relentless storm, reminding her of the carefully laid plans that left no room for deviation, especially not for a foreign businessman who threatened to unravel everything she had fought to build. The walls of her apartment seemed to close in as she wrestled with the growing turmoil inside her heart. Torn between the safe path carved by tradition and the unpredictable pull of a love that defied logic and reason, a love that promised transformation but demanded sacrifice. Her thoughts spiraled into doubt, the unspoken barriers of culture, distance, and family honor, looming like shadows that threatened to extinguish the fragile flame she and Michael had ignited. And yet, beneath the weight of these obstacles, a stubborn hope flickered, refusing to be snuffed out. During a tense family dinner, the conversation turned sharply to her future, with pointed questions and veiled warnings that made Beatrice's resolve waver, the subtle but unmistakable message clear. Her heart's desires were secondary to duty and legacy. As she excused herself from the table, the final piece of the puzzle slipped into place, a delicate antique locket she found tucked away in an old family drawer, its intricate design matching the faded photograph Michael had shown her, a silent testament to secrets buried deep within their intertwined histories. Beatrice clutched the locket tightly, her breath catching as the realization dawned that the obstacles she faced were not just external, but woven into the very fabric of her past. And with that, the true challenge of choosing between love and loyalty became painfully clear. Beatrice stood frozen in her father's study, the antique locket trembling in her palm as his words echoed like thunder through her consciousness, each syllable driving deeper wedges between her heart and the future she had dared to imagine with Michael. And when he delivered his ultimatum with the cold precision of a business transaction, she felt something precious and fragile shatter inside her chest, the sound reverberating through her soul like breaking crystal. Are you rooting for Beatrice's love? If this story is moving you as much as it is us, leave a like and show you're following along on Sparks Fly Stories. Shall we continue our story? The family dinner that followed felt like a funeral for dreams she hadn't realized she was carrying. Her mother's gentle but firm reminders about duty and tradition wrapping around her throat like silk chains, beautiful but suffocating, while her father's disappointed gaze followed her every movement, making clear that choosing Michael would mean choosing exile from everything she had ever known as home, security, and belonging. Michael's confusion when she called to end things nearly destroyed her resolve, his voice breaking as he asked questions she couldn't answer without revealing the depth of her family's opposition. And when he said her name one final time before the line went silent, Beatrice collapsed against her bedroom door, sliding down until she sat crumpled on the floor, clutching the mysterious locket that somehow connected their stories in ways she still couldn't fully understand. Days blurred into weeks of mechanical existence, her successful career continuing like clockwork, while her heart felt permanently frozen in that moment of goodbye. And every morning she woke, hoping the pain would lessen, only to discover that true love doesn't diminish with time, but grows deeper, more essential, like roots that refuse to be torn from soil that has become their very essence of life. The merger Michael had come to finalize was completed without him, other executives handling the final paperwork, while Beatrice learned through office gossip that he had returned to the United States earlier than planned, and something about that information struck her as wrong, incomplete, as if crucial pieces of their story remained unwritten, waiting in shadows she hadn't yet explored. Late one evening, alone in her apartment, with the locket spread open beside Michael's business card, Beatriz found herself studying the faded photograph he had shown her with new eyes, noticing details she had missed in their brief time together. And as understanding began to dawn, like sunrise after the longest night, she realized that some connections transcend coincidence, geography, even family opposition, because what she and Michael shared might be deeper than chance, older than their own lifetimes, and more powerful than any force trying to keep them apart. Standing at her window overlooking Sao Paulo's glittering lights, Beatriz felt the first spark of hope ignite in her chest, small but fierce, as she understood that love worth fighting for demands courage she had never needed before. And perhaps the greatest risk wasn't loving Michael, but letting fear rob her of a connection that felt written in the stars themselves. Beatriz stood trembling in her grandmother's old room, the locket opened in her palm as her eyes moved between the faded photograph and a framed picture on the dusty nightstand. And when the impossible truth crashed over her like a wave, she felt the ground shift beneath her feet, because the young couple in Michael's photograph were her own grandparents, standing in the exact same spot where they had fallen in love 60 years earlier, in the same Sao Paulo square where she and Michael had shared their first coffee. Her grandmother's journals, discovered in a wooden box beneath the bed, revealed the story Beatriz had never known: how her grandmother had taught Portuguese to an American soldier's son during the war, how they had fallen in love through language lessons, and how his family had taken him back to the United States before love could fully bloom, leaving behind only letters and a promise to return that circumstances had made impossible to keep. The soldier's name was Harrison, and as Beatriz traced her finger over the yellowed pages describing his kind eyes and gentle manner of listening, she realized that Michael wasn't just carrying his grandfather's photograph. He was carrying his grandfather's unfulfilled love, the very love that had created the space in both their hearts that only the other could fill. With shaking hands, she dialed his number, her heart hammering as she understood that what they felt wasn't merely attraction, but the completion of a story that had been waiting 3 generations to find its ending. A love that had survived war, distance, and time itself, passing from grandmother to granddaughter, from grandfather to grandson, like a sacred inheritance that refused to be lost. Michael's voice broke when she told him what she had discovered, and when he whispered that he had been researching his grandfather's Brazilian love story for months, hoping to understand why he felt so drawn to her country, to her language, to her, Beatriz knew that some connections transcend coincidence, that their love was not just their own, but the fulfillment of a promise made decades before they were born. And now the only question was whether they would have the courage to honor what their grandparents had begun. Beatriz stood in the same Sao Paulo square where her grandmother had first taught Portuguese to a young American soldier 60 years earlier, Michael's hand warm in hers as she watched him place a single white rose at the base of the memorial fountain. And in that moment she understood that some love stories span generations, waiting patiently for the right moment to complete themselves through hearts brave enough to honor what came before. The wedding planning had become a celebration, not just of their love, but of a cosmic reunion that neither time nor war could prevent. And as Beatriz looked through her grandmother's journals one final time, She marveled at how the universe had orchestrated every detail: the merger that brought Michael to Brazil, the exact coffee shop where they met, even the timing of her discovery of the locket, all perfectly aligned to fulfill a promise made decades before they were born. Standing in her grandmother's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit her, Beatriz felt the presence of two souls who had loved deeply but incompletely. And she knew that what she and Michael shared wasn't just their own romance, but the completion of a story that had been waiting 3 generations for its perfect ending, proving that true love never truly dies, but finds new vessels to carry its eternal flame. When Michael slipped his grandfather's vintage ring onto her finger, the same ring that had waited in an American jewelry box for 70 years, Beatriz felt the circle close with such beautiful precision that tears streamed down her face, because she finally understood that coincidences are just love's way of remaining anonymous, and that somewhere in the vast mystery of existence, hearts that are meant to find each other always do, no matter how many obstacles stand in their way or how much time must pass before the stars align perfectly for forever. What an emotional journey of love, discoveries, and destiny. If this story touched your heart as it did ours, subscribe to Sparks Fly Stories and leave a like for more stories that prove true love always finds a way. Thank you for sharing this experience with us until the end.